You are listening to Clear Your Cache podcast. Viewer discretion is advised since we use words like shit and fuck. Not to worry. Comedy content, funny content, interesting facts. Please enjoy.
Boo-doo.
All right, we are in session.
We are in business.
Yes.
All right. So, what day is this actually before we start? Because I can't remember the
I
date.
don't remember. I don't remember either.
Oh, shit.
God. Okay, hang on. Did you? We are so prepared. Uh,
I got my notes.
I've got my notes, but I don't remember the day it was. Um,
Let us Google. I think it's just
oh,
April 15th, right?
is it? Did you pick another Monday?
April 15th,
I think that's a
uh,
Wednesday, actually.
National Titanic Day. Yeah, okay. So, it's April 15th.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I didn't make it that far. Okay. Anyways, I'm Daniel.
I'm Sydney. Welcome to Clear Your Cache.
Welcome to the podcast where we can't seem to get our shit together.
But we have a good time doing it
Yes,
or
I
not doing
laugh.
it.
Uh, you know, um, I am in a group text with my family, and everyone is like texting, going, "I'm going insane. I'm going crazy," and they started laughing at me because I sent them a text, and I was like, I have been drunk since 10 a.m. this morning. I have rearranged every single ounce of furniture in my house and I am loving life. I'm also about to try a hair tutorial that I saw on YouTube. And they was like, "You are such an introvert. Like, what the fuck are you doing?"
It looked really good though.
Thank you. You liked it?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I might let you do it to my hair.
Oh my god. It's really easy. I just wet my hair, I twisted it up, and then I bobby pinned like small sections. And then after, and I don't know why I'm telling all of our listeners this, but you know what? To each his own. Maybe we got some gay boys out there that want to do this.
You might.
Um, but I got up, took the bobby pins out, and brushed it all the way through with a brush, and it was like mega frizzy. And then I had to put gel in it to get the frizz out, and it like tamed it down. And then it literally ended up looking like that kinky curly mess.
I
Uh,
think it looked nice. The end result was good.
I liked it. I actually had a couple people message me going, "You should get a perm," and I'm like, "No, I could just do this."
Nope, I did this and it's fine.
Yeah. Um, but anyways, how have you been this week?
Oh, just living the
Is it
dream.
essential?
Yeah. Still essential. Still have to go to work. Still not
Oh
great.
God, I
I had
would.
this person look at me today and he was like, y'all are just doing this so we'll buy more stuff. And I was like, no, actually, what we really want is for you to go home. Like, you think I
I think
want to
it would
be
have been.
here?
Yeah, I would have said, I wish you had never fucking walked in this place. I don't give a
Yeah,
shit if you buy something or not. I
it's
make
just
the same amount hourly.
yeah, like it's just stupid. You really think we're just open to? I mean, yeah, it's a business, so obviously Walmart wants your money, but like, don't look at me and say that, dude. I understand that you need your things, and I am grateful to still have my job. However, if you're gonna be a dick, like, go home.
Yeah,
Nobody
like
asked you to come in here.
piss
Like,
off. Nobody cares.
yeah, get out of here. There have been people, a lot more people yelling lately.
Like my counter is over. I think it's over 100,000 now deaths.
Damn,
Yeah, like it's over. Actually, I'm about to tell you. I'm gonna get on my counter and tell you.
shit's getting
Um,
wild. That's why we're doing this remotely.
yeah. Which the we did testing before we actually started recording, and it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds really good. Um, yeah. There's 107,520 deaths so far.
Jeez.
Yes. There's over 514,415 confirmed cases in the US.
Damn, boy.
Yeah. Um, I don't see any relevant statistics. There was a statistic this morning that made me laugh. It said, "Stop looking at this sheet if you have anxiety."
Yeah, pretty much. Stop looking outside if you have anxiety.
Yes, just chill out. Hence why I've been drinking so much. I'm literally not going to be able to fit out of my apartment door if I keep drinking
And
these dead
listen,
calories.
you just got to do what you got to do, man.
You got to get through it.
Got to get through
Got to shape up.
it. All right, so let's get into this. I'm really excited about our subject today.
I am so pumped. I watched, okay, so our topic today is Titanic
Hmm.
because it is, what was the actual day
It
called?
is the April 15th of every year is National Titanic Remembrance Day, and it's dedicated to the
Okay,
memory of the lives lost on the Titanic. And you can
okay.
observe it by learning the history of the Titanic, some of the stories of the ones who survived or perished in the
Mhm.
sinking. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We just looked up a bunch of stuff. We got some hard facts. You got a curveball for us at the end. And I'm going to try to get
Yes,
into
I
some
do.
stories of, the people on the ship. And I have a little bit of an interesting little curveball too that we'll get to at the
Throw in there.
end.
Okay, but so before I say this, did you have any information on a staircase?
A staircase? No.
Okay. Then I'm gonna go ahead and say it, just because it's not in my notes, but I remember it from watching this documentary. Um, which, by the way, I found two documentaries yesterday.
Yeah.
I watched a 44-minute one that was just one continuance, and then there was one that had like three episodes.
Yeah.
Um, that three-episode one is the one that got me good. Like the first documentary, I had to take my anxiety medicine because it was the suspenseful music. Just
Was
I
that the
doubled up on my
Drain
meds.
the Titanic?
Yes.
I know, dude. Like I've watched that a couple times now, and every time I'm just like, this is amazingly terrifying.
Yeah, I like just the thought of being out in the vast ocean where all you can see is water and you have no help
Yeah.
and you're sinking makes me want to chug a bottle of wine and down a bottle of painkillers and just
Yeah.
end it.
I know. Like me and Caitlin were kind of talking about that, and she was like, like it puts her in a weird headspace for like how she imagines things when she sees like that, stuff like
Uh-huh.
that. And I was like, yeah, because when I think of it, I'm just like, I can't fathom like I am on the ship, right?
Hmm.
I can visibly and tangibly see and feel how much bigger than me that ship is, right? Like it's
Yeah.
huge. Hundreds of me, literally over 2,000 of people sized humans fit on this ship. And then something swallows that motherfucker
And
because it's sinking and I'm in it.
yeah, and can you imagine? Okay, so it sunk 12,000 feet.
Yeah, it was like 2 miles down.
Yeah, like can you imagine 2 miles of water being above you?
No,
Like
like,
you're not getting to the top of that water without drowning.
well, no, you would die before
You
you. I mean,
would you be crushed to death?
yeah, like that water pressure is intense, dude.
I can't. I can't.
It's insane.
I remember actually, and this was the fact that I was going to tell you.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't when they investigated the Titanic, and this is before we get into all our stuff. And I just want to say this before we forget, and by we I mean me, obviously. Um,
Okay.
but um, when they originally investigated the Titanic, they couldn't figure out where the staircase was.
Okay.
Because it was gone. It had disappeared. They didn't know where it went. They thought maybe erosion had gotten it since it had been so long. And when they recreated the ship for the movie and they did a test drive on like the sinking,
Mm-hmm.
the wooden staircase shot out of the top of the boat because, as heavy as that wood was, all of that wood floats. So no one realized that when the Titanic sank, that entire gigantic staircase was buoyant enough to dislodge and shoot out of the top of the Titanic,
Damn.
and it floated away. So that's like, and they didn't know until they were making the movie that that's why the staircase in the actual Titanic was missing.
Oh, see, I didn't know it was missing.
Yeah, because they couldn't find it. Like the big, huge, beautiful wooden staircase that they went down
Yeah.
into, like the pretty party room.
So it just
That
shot out.
yeah, that bitch shot the fuck out and went straight to the surface.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's
So
insane.
he said it was like the most perfect form of life imitating art that he had ever seen.
Phew. I
Yeah.
can't imagine being like a part of that and like seeing it firsthand, like shoot out, like
Oh
while
my
you're
god.
experimenting with it.
I would flip my shit, but like I also probably wouldn't have been like paying attention enough to be like, "Oh yeah, I wonder if I made a brilliant discovery. Who the fuck am I to piece this together?"
Right.
Like I wouldn't have been able to call someone and be like, "Hey, I think I know what happened to the staircase."
Right. I think I know what happened. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
Add this
I
to your
know it.
data. Well,
All right,
speaking of
so
data, I'm going to shoot some facts and stuff here just so we have a base layout because I know you're going to want to get real deep into what you got.
oh yes, I have the best story ever.
So, the Titanic,
Uh-huh.
how much do you think it cost to build?
Oh god.
Now, remember, this is back
Is
in
like
1912.
is it over 500,000?
It is $7.5 million dollars is what it cost to build it.
Oh good god. I wonder how much that is today.
I don't know. We'd have to look up one of those little calculators.
Okay.
But that's a lot of money. But
Fuck yeah, that's a lot of
funny
money.
enough, is the richest person on the Titanic was worth way more than it actually cost to build the Titanic. I don't remember exactly how much he was worth, but it was in like an insane amount. It was billions of dollars in today's money is what he was worth.
Good god.
But the Titanic set sail on April 10th, 1912. It struck the iceberg April 14th, 1912 at 11:40 p.m.
Mhm.
and then it sank April 15th, 2 hours and 40 minutes after it struck. Yeah.
Damn.
So it didn't go down like super quick. Like people had time to react. And what's
Mhm.
strange is it's not really strange, it's just kind of mind-boggling. The first lifeboat was not cast until 60 minutes after impact.
Why?
That yeah, I guess they were trying to keep people calm and they kept telling
Like,
people like there's no danger, don't worry about it. They were trying to not cause a panic.
and they didn't know what the fuck to do?
Right. So almost half of the time that it was going down, nobody was doing anything.
Did they? I think I saw that they didn't do this, but they didn't do like a practice safety run of like,
No.
okay.
And I have some stuff on that too. I've got some regulations that were actually changed after the sinking of the Titanic
Uh-huh.
because it they were so ill prepared for it because they just didn't think it was
Ooh.
possible. Like it was
Right.
deemed an unsinkable ship.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it, speaking of lifeboats, so there were only 20 lifeboats on the deck of this ship. Now I think it could hold something like 46,
Hmm.
but
Which
there
it
were
fucking needed.
yeah, but there were only 20, which was only enough for like half of the passengers. 14 of those were actual wooden lifeboats that were 30 feet long and held 65 people. Two of them were small emergency lifeboats. Okay, they were only 25 feet long and they held 40 passengers. And four of them were collapsible fucking boats with canvas siding that were 27 feet long and held 47 people.
What?
Collapsible, dude. They they could fold up and be stored flat.
No, that is not okay. Not okay for like the middle of the ocean and freezing ass fucking water.
Right. Now, something to go along with this with the 20 lifeboats. Did you know that that was actually over the amount that was required by the maritime regulations
What?
at the time?
So you mean to tell me that they had more than what was required of them to have?
Yep, at the time, because the law for it, I think, was made in the 1800s. I have that written down a little bit further,
Mhm.
but I think you were only required to have like 16 boats, 16 lifeboats. But that's because the Titanic was like over 40,000 tons,
Mhm.
and these laws were only written for ships up to 10,000 tons.
So this was uncharted territory for
Right.
them.
And nothing had been changed to suit that size ship. So
But still, like,
technically,
people should be smart enough to do the math and think like, oh, okay, well, if we have more people than this law demands, they're not gonna fucking be able to make it all on this boat.
you would think, but sometimes pride outweighs logic. I mean, they thought it was unsinkable. It was just an amazing
Ugh,
feat at the time.
good God.
Speaking of feet, it was 8,820 feet long,
Like
something
as
like
like
that.
width or height?
Length, like,
Okay,
hang on,
length.
Caitlin's fact checking me because, oh yeah, see, I had a comma. I knew that was wrong. 882 feet long.
Oh Jesus Christ. That's
8,000 feet would have been
still
enormous. Typos. It was 882 feet long. Its maximum width was 92 feet long, 6 inches. It was 175 feet in height at its highest point from its lowest point.
God.
It weighed 46,328 tons. And this fucker was so big that it had a draught of 34 feet, 7 inches. Now, if you don't know what that means whenever they put it in the water,
Uh-huh.
it displaced 52,000 tons of water.
Oh fuck.
Yeah. So this, I mean, it was a big ship, but it had never been done before. So a lot of the regulations hadn't changed for it.
That's terrifying to even think about.
Yeah. And it took them 3 years to build it.
God, I did the inflation calculator. Do you want to know how much it is?
Tell me.
Okay, so in 1912,
Uh huh.
if it cost $7.5 million to build, do you want to guess?
Mm, is it close to a billion?
No,
How much is it?
it's not. It's $195 million.
Dang.
Yeah, well, it's a little over. It's like $195.5 million.
So this is an expensive ship.
Hell yeah, it is. Like you could, uh, in that documentary that we watched, it said that it was like as tall as a 6 foot building.
Yeah. Well, that's how much went under when it impacted the ocean floor.
Uh huh.
60 feet of it is lodged into the seafloor, and 40 feet of it is still sticking out. So what's underneath that you cannot see is
Uh-huh.
the height of a 6 foot story building, but there's
Oh
more
my
on top.
God.
Yeah. Like it almost dug all the way up to its we called it the anchors.
Uh, okay. That's just
It's
terrifying to think
massive.
of. I don't
Like,
want to ever see the bottom of the seafloor. I don't want to see halfway down. I don't want to see nothing. I don't
yeah.
want to see it.
I don't want to see any of it personally.
Nope. Leave it be. I don't give a shit.
Scared me enough to watch it on the TV.
Hell yeah, it is. I had to take my anxiety medicine.
It was
Mother Nature
insane.
does not want you fucking down there.
No.
Mother Nature is trying to kill some of us as we speak.
That's right. You don't fuck with Mother Nature, boy.
She will win.
She will. But unfortunately, for 2000, plus passengers on the Titanic. She fucked with them real hard.
Hell yeah,
And
she
there was
did.
there was
Or or did she?
I don't know.
We'll get into my story in a fucking minute.
Okay. Uh so there were over 1500 deaths and
Hmm.
like around 705 to 712 survivors. It kind of depended on like where I was getting the information from. It kind of fluctuated. But that was the average number I found was in the low 700s.
Okay.
Um, 324 women survived, 56 children, and 323 men is what I came across. So, of course, Titanic was on her maiden voyage.
Maiden.
Get maiden on the maiden voyage
The maiden voyage.
from Southampton, England, and the destination was obviously New York. But she
Hmm.
made two pit stops on the way, one in France and one in Ireland. And when she left Ireland, that's when she accommodated all her passengers. Like I said, it took 3
Okay.
years to build this
Okay.
motherfucker. All right, construction started in 1909, and then in 1911, the boat was pushed into the water and it was like fitted out, which means they just like put all those little things on it, like the propeller, the electrical lighting, walls, and shit like that on the inside. And then in 1912 is whenever she sailed.
Mhm. Do you know, did anything that you read mention electrical problems or anything?
No,
No.
not that I found. No.
Okay. I'll elaborate why I asked that later.
Okay. Um. So would you like to talk about like why the Titanic struck per se?
Yeah, because like I don't all I know is that the bitch hit an iceberg and went down.
Okay. So,
Like that's all I know.
well, there's always been a lot of like speculation and kind of like confusion and probably a lot of anger at the time that it hit of like why didn't they see it before they got so close? Why did they ignore all the ice warnings and shit? Because
Hmm.
the captain got like 6 ice warnings that night before they
Like
struck.
what is an ice warning? Do you mean like some people telling him, "Hey, there's
Yes.
ice"?
Yeah, so like surrounding ships in the area would like
Uh-huh.
radio them with
Oh,
like
bitch.
little Morse
Okay.
codey shit and be like, "Hey, there's ice." He got 6 of those that same night,
And he ignored all of them.
all of them. Ignored every single one of them. And what I read was that one of them actually came from the Californian, which was uh
Yes, that is like I wrote about that. I'm
yeah,
so glad you brought that up.
it was like right next to him, and there's also debate on how close they actually were.
Mhm.
But we'll get
Mhm.
into that. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yes.
So, part the scientific reason for basically what I could find was that because the weather was so calm and it was a moonless night and it was just
Mhm.
clear out. The seas were flat, and you would think that that would make it prime conditions to be able to see an obstruction, but it
Mhm.
wasn't because of a phenomenon called super refraction or an abnormal bending of the light.
Okay.
So because there was no moon, there was no like reflection on the water, which made it a little hard to judge distance, if I understood correctly.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that created a mirage. So like whenever you're driving and it looks like there's water on the road, it was kind of
Yes.
like that. So there's what they call a false horizon and a true horizon, and the false horizon made it to where literally the iceberg was cloaked. So you couldn't see it off of the horizon
Okay.
because of the weather conditions. So it you want to guess how far away they actually were from it whenever the guy yelled iceberg?
No, okay, so when I make this estimate, I already have anxiety.
Yeah.
Um when I make this estimate, what measurement do I use? Like feet?
Time.
Time. Okay. 10 minutes?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. He saw it 30 seconds before they hit it.
30 seconds is when he saw it before they hit it, which means it was only a mile away from the ship.
How fast does the ship fucking move?
The ship was going 22.5 knots at the time, only zero point 0.5 knots below maximum speed.
Okay,
So
so
you're
that
going
doesn't
full
give
fucking
him
force.
enough time to cut it really hard and like miss it enough to where it doesn't like break the fucking ship in half?
Absolutely not. Ironically, if the ship had hit head on, it probably wouldn't have sank.
Really?
Yes, because the ship has bulkheads in it, which I wrote some stuff down about that too. But if it had just hit head on, only one bulkhead and compartment would have flooded. Now, the Titanic could have stayed floating with four compartments flooded. However, because it kind of struck down the side, six of
It
them flooded.
okay, and then that was enough to make it go down.
Yep. And the architect of the ship, knew as soon as six of them got flooded, like that was it. They were sinking.
But
It was
isn't that
inevitable.
something that the captain should also know?
He should, yes, but if there's a chance you can miss something, you're probably going to try to miss it. You're never going to just be like, "Oh my god, let's just run right into it."
I mean, that's fair. But like I don't know, I'm thinking to be fair, I guess I wouldn't be able to make that decision within 30 seconds either.
No, because I mean, if you think about it, if you're driving down the road and just you're about to hit a tree,
Mhm.
and you're like, because for relativity, let's say you're like 5 seconds away from hitting the tree, your reaction time is not going to be great, and your automatic instinct is going to be to swerve the car because you don't want
True.
to hit it head on, and you think if you swerve, you have a chance of missing it.
See, I think it's just me, but like this is going to be very country of me. When my grandfather taught me how to, this is probably not anywhere near close to like an analogy either, but when my grandfather taught me to like drive a motor vehicle, and like he said this first on a four wheeler,
Uh huh.
a all terrain vehicle, I guess non country people can call it. um, he taught me if you think that you're going to cause more damage to the other thing or item, then you will yourself straddle it.
Yeah.
But he was like, if you think it's going to damage you worse, get off the road, like run
Right.
it. Um, so I guess like my thought immediately goes to him telling me that in situations like that.
Right. But if you're, I mean, car versus tree, ship versus
Fair.
iceberg, like you're probably gonna try to miss it, dude.
Fair. Very fair.
But this mirage effect is why they got so close before anybody said anything.
Mhm.
And this also, they think, played a role in why the Californian didn't see, like, it didn't really know that that was the Titanic,
Mhm.
because there was speculation like the guy on that ship turned the radio off, went to bed, but they could see the Titanic, is what they said, which makes it, there are some accounts that put it at like 58 miles away, but then I read
Mhm.
one where it was like it's 20 miles away, but the best one was that it was only 6 miles away.
The other ship.
Yes.
See, I read that there were three ships out, and I don't remember the name of the middle ship, but there was the Titanic,
Uh-huh.
then there was a ship in the middle, and then on the other side of that ship in the middle there was the SS Californian. And that USS Californian thought that the middle ship was the Titanic, and the Titanic thought the middle ship was the USS Californian. So that is why there is so many different recollections of what people actually saw shipwise,
Yeah.
because everyone thought that the ships that they were seeing were different ships.
And see, that might be true,
Hmm.
but some of what I read was saying like the Californian was only 6 miles away, could have gotten there before the ship sank, but because of the light refraction, it made the Titanic look like a smaller ship, which made them think
Mhm.
it was not the Titanic. So
Ooh.
when that ship stopped, which would be the Titanic hitting the iceberg,
Uh-huh.
they thought that a smaller ship was just stopping for the night and not going through the icy
Oh.
pass. And then when they saw the signal flares, which would be the Titanic signaling for help, they thought that this smaller ship was just having like a party or something. And
What?
then as the ship disappeared, which would be the Titanic literally sinking to the bottom of the ocean, they thought that that was that boat sailing off in the opposite direction and just getting smaller and smaller in the distance.
Ah, that's fucked up though.
Yeah, like real fucked up. Because, and they got scrutiny forever as like they will go down in history as the ship that, they could have saved everybody
Yeah. Oh
and they
yeah.
just
And
ignored
like
it.
I've got some of that shit on like my conspiracy theory that I'm doing, which I kind of believe.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up the USS California. I can't remember because it's not a really a part of the story at all, but I can't remember what the name of the middle ship was.
Yeah, because I've read that too, that there was three ships involved,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of confusion.
And I don't really know what the purpose of the middle ship was or why it was even there. I don't remember what kind of ship it was. It's not really relevant to mostly anything.
Yeah. But there is a lot of speculation going across these things because, even survivors of it, you have a lot of eyewitnesses and the accounts are all different for the
Yes.
nights, because you're human beings. But the
Mm-hmm.
science behind it, the stuff that they're coming out with now, like it's really
Yeah.
interesting.
And plus, you went through something
Traumatic.
so traumatic that they almost should expect you to not remember it or at least not get it right. Because if your flight or fight response kicks in and you're literally trying to survive out in the middle of the goddamn ocean
Right.
and you're in on this huge sinking ship and you were one of the lucky ones that got out, and I mean really fucking lucky,
Yeah.
then I don't expect you to remember shit
Yeah,
other
it's
than, "Oh, you got off. Good for you." Like, I'm glad.
right. Your facts are going to be a little skewed because you just like, went through a life or death situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So,
just some just to give like some perspective of how traumatic this shit was,
mhm,
I'm going to rattle off just some quick facts about the sinking, some of which we may have
okay.
already discussed.
Oh, before we get started, if you can hear text messages coming through on my end, I do not know how to stop them, and I'm really sorry. My my as ironic as it is, my hairdresser is trying to seal in an appointment for me, and I'm not responding, and I think she's panicking because I'm not responding.
Tell that bitch we already did your hair.
I know. I did my own hair. Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. So, like I said, the 6 ice warnings were received by the Titanic prior to collision. All of them were ignored.
Uh-huh.
30 seconds passed between the spotting of the iceberg by Frederick Fleet and its impact, which was only 1 mile away. They were
Hmm.
traveling 22.5 knots, which was only half a knot below its full speed.
Hmm.
60 minutes passed between the collision and the launching of the first lifeboat. They were only 400 miles from land when they struck the iceberg.
Damn. How far had they traveled? Do we know?
Yeah, they were almost like they were closer to New York than they were England.
Okay, so they were more than halfway there.
Yeah. Um, the gash in the side of the ship, by
Hmm.
eyewitness accounts for people who were there, 300 feet was the estimated gash size in the hull. But from the recent technology that we've developed and going down and taking high definition scans and developing 3D models and stuff, the actual size of the hull was only 11 square feet.
And that sunk the ship.
That sunk the ship because of the bulkheads that were on there, which I'll explain a little bit more on that, um,
Hmm.
and the regulations that changed because of that. because the Titanics didn't go all the way up. They only went up like 10 feet above the water line or something. So they were able to keep flooding and they weren't actually watertight. And that allowed
Okay.
more compartments to fill and then it sunk.
Oh, that sucks.
Like I said, 4 compartments could fill and it'd be fine. 6 flooded, so they went down. 400 tons of water was taken in per minute after the collision, which was 370 gallons of seawater per second.
I couldn't aim. I don't think I could even imagine a space that would fit that much
I
water.
know. Like, could you just imagine the people like in the boiler room of that section of the ship? Like, you just
Oh,
instantly, like,
instantly got flooded with water. Like,
yeah,
and it's like just like this is morbid to think about, but they didn't like some of them probably didn't instantly die. They sat there, they drowned. Like you instantly get flooded with water. And if
yeah.
the water pressure didn't kill you, it probably broke your bones
Oh,
to where
yeah.
you couldn't even swim. And then you just had to chill out in that room and die.
Yep. Which is just awful. Like 370 gallons per second. Depending on the size of that boiler room, like you only had a few seconds to decide, like, if you weren't knocked out, what
What
the
the
hell you
fuck
were
was
going to
going
do.
on? Yeah.
Yeah.
And by then, it's probably, I mean, it was way too late before it even started because there
Right.
was no way you could get out of that. But
Yeah, it's just like it's just done.
that is so awful. Like, I don't even want to imagine. But okay, to be fair, I would never fucking get on a boat to put myself in that situation to do something like that and get hurt.
Nope. I won't even go on a cruise ship.
No,
Screw
hell no.
that.
I will never be on a cruise ship.
Nope. Big water and me? Uh-uh.
Nope. I will get in a swimming pool.
Yep. If I can't see the bottom to it, I ain't getting in it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I We can have our own little snorkeling experience in a 6 foot pool.
that's
Uh,
right.
That's it.
Something I
That's a,
might be able to touch the bottom to and boot myself back up.
yep. That's all I need.
That's all I got. That's all I need for me.
Well, and some booze.
Which something that's weird. I know this is probably really weird and nobody ever thinks about this, but the swimming pools in the Titanic, it just creeps me out to think that they're like now filled with water in the bottom of water.
Uh,
Like that just creeps me out.
I mean, can you imagine like the heated swimming pools that were at the bottom of the fucking boat
Ugh,
were for the first class citizens.
yeah.
So the ones that paid the most money died first.
Yeah, they were in the if you were in the bottom in the pool, yeah, you
You
gotcha.
were fucked.
Gotcha, my guy.
Oh, that's a very probably a time when having more money didn't get you any farther in
It
life.
really didn't because it was women and children first at that point, no
Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm.
matter what. So by the time, they've struck, they're sinking. Um, when the Titanic goes down, it takes only 5 to 10 minutes for the bow and the stern to hit the bottom of the ocean floor. That's
Oh, damn.
pretty fast travel. The bow traveled at 35 miles per hour, and that's the part that dug 60 feet into the seafloor, but they're still 40 foot
Hmm.
above. And then the stern traveled 50 miles per hour, and which is interesting to me because the bow is the part that aerodynamically went down. That's like the front part of the ship.
Uh-huh.
And it traveled slower to the bottom than the stern did, which is the rear part, and it was spinning counterclockwise as it was
Why
going
did it
down.
travel slower?
I don't
It,
know. You would think
because
it would go faster because it's so
right.
aerodynamic.
And if it was traveling in a straight line and it wasn't spinning
Right.
and it would just went straight down, you think that it would go faster. And the only thing that I would be able to think of is if there was a different type of density in the materials, but doesn't that shit have to be equally distributed in order for it to like fucking float right?
Well, maybe not, but I mean, you would think, but I don't know. I didn't get
Yeah.
too far into like the construction of it, but when the stern was going down, they originally, the widespread theory was that the ship snapped in two and parted on the surface, which now they've determined that that's probably not how it happened. It
Hmm.
may have split, but it didn't completely break apart, because if it had done that on the surface, the debris field on the ocean floor would be much larger than what it is. So they're thinking it may have snapped, but they collectively went down attached, and then somewhere along the line, the stern spun off and began spinning counterclockwise, but it was probably almost to the seabed when it
Hmm.
actually broke apart. And you can see like the scrape marks on the bottom of the ocean floor where the stern was spinning and then struck.
I can't. I'm not gonna fucking look at it. I
Yeah,
don't think, like, I don't even think I'd want to look at it if you showed me an actual picture.
it's insane.
Yeah.
And if you didn't happen to be somebody who unfortunately went down with the ship and you were in the water temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit or -2 degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know if you've ever been to one of the museums, but I have been to a Titanic museum and they
I
have the
have not.
water. You should go because they had that water that you could put your hand in.
Hmm.
I had my hand in there for maybe 30 seconds and I thought it was going to fall off.
I know that they have one in Gatlinburg, which may
Yes.
be like the closest one to us.
That's the one I've been to. And it's
Okay.
an amazing
Is
museum
that the
to
one
go
you
to.
get an actual character and then you find
Yes.
out at the end if they lived or not?
Yeah, I think they do it on all of them, but it's really amazing to walk through and see like all the stories and the artifacts and stuff. It's heartbreaking, but it's
Mhm.
interesting. The average
Hmm.
life expectancy if you were in the water was only 15 to 45 minutes, and I guess that depends on like what you were
Oh.
wearing.
Does that include people that were like staying afloat?
Yeah. So like
But so
that's just if you're
none
in
of
there
those
with a life
people got
preserver.
saved.
No, I don't believe so. Well, I think they maybe pulled 9 people out of the water, but I don't think they were in there for very long.
Okay.
Um,
So they must have been like the very last ones at the tip of the ship.
yeah, they were. These were just the people. Like, if you couldn't find anything to get into, your life expectancy was around 15 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
Um,
That sucks.
yeah.
I would have just like shot myself or found something on the ship to kill myself at that point. Like if you know you're gonna die and you're not
Some
gonna be
people might
saved,
have. Some
I would
people
have
might
went
have.
out.
And then back to the just the stern and the bow here. Just one more quick fact was that
Yeah.
38,000 tons of water filled the bow, which caused the stern to rise up out of the water, according to eyewitness accounts. So,
And
so much water filled the front of that fucking boat
that it tipped it.
that it tipped it.
Like
Yup.
that makes me want to puke.
Yup.
Because can you imagine something? Can you just imagine something that tall erecting out of
No.
the fucking ocean?
I sure fucking can't.
Oh God, I can't. And like, how does that shit happen? And you can't see that from the other ship?
I thought it was sailing away.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, like submarine style or what?
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck you thought was going on, dude, but it wasn't what was going on, all right?
Maybe they just turned another fucking cheek.
Stupid. And it was so
Mm-mm.
stupid that a lot of regulations were changed after the sinking of the Titanic, like Ice Patrol. In 1914,
Mhm.
International Ice Patrol was formed when their sole purpose was to monitor iceberg presences and movements.
So, how does that work? Do they go ahead of the ships that are coming, or do they just literally like get paid to drive around everywhere
I
and look at these icebergs?
I
No,
think it was just like the US Navy collaborated with someone else and they just kind of like they would have to go out and monitor and find them and navigate like around these things to see like to give ships like, spots of like, hey, there's iceberg clusters
yeah.
here.
I feel like that would be like I feel like that record of all these icebergs would be huge.
Yeah. Massive.
Like, how do you keep up with this to the point where you're like, oh, I see you're sailing from here to here. Be sure to watch out for this one and this one and this one and this one and this
Yeah.
one and this one and this one. Like, how do you do that?
It's just insane. especially with the amount of technology they had back then. I mean, we have advances now, but imagine in 1914 the amount of legwork that had to go into that.
Yeah, no wonder we're not allowed in Antarctica.
Yeah. The lifeboat, that regulation was changed.
Mhm,
Every single vessel has to have enough boats to accommodate every single person on board, which should have been regulation to begin with.
mhm.
At the time, for a 10,000-ton vessel, it was only mandatory to have 16 boats. So technically, Titanic was over by four. But again, they were a 40,000 plus ton vessel. And the largest one at that time had only been 13,000 tons. And that law had been written in 1894. Also, lifeboat safety drills became mandatory.
Well, they
Radio
fucking should have
control.
been to begin with.
Yeah, it should have been. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
why that wouldn't have crossed your mind anyway. Like, hey, we should probably figure out how to use this.
Yeah, we should probably figure out what happens in case that I'm drunk
In
and
case
you
we
can
go
tell.
down.
Yeah, in case we sink.
But I digress.
This this infuriates me. I'm
Yeah.
like, it makes me think of whenever we were like little and in high school, and every time we went on a field trip, we had to get off the bus as a safety drill and
Yeah.
then get back on.
Something that simple, but you can't do one for a massive fucking ship.
Right. Oh.
Radio control, that was changed as well. The Radioactive 1912 was passed.
Uh-huh.
It regulated the use of certain bandwidths between the U.S. Navy and amateur radio operators so that there
Mm,
was a more regular flow and it was, divided to where you didn't get random chatter in with things that needed to be conveyed. And crews were also required to man their radio at all times. Because remember, like I said, that person on the Californian went to bed and turned the radio off.
which is fucking retarded.
Yeah. And then
He better
ship
have
did
gotten fired.
yeah, he probably did. Ship designs, those were refitted for safety.
Mhm,
So double bottoms of existing ships were extended up the sides of their hull, which is like their water line, to create a double hull. So that now
mhm,
all of them have that double kind of sheath on them for better protection, whereas they didn't have that before. The height of the bulkheads changed. And a
mhm,
bulkhead, again, is just, it increases the structural rigidity of the ship,
mhm.
but it also like divides functional areas into rooms and creates watertight seals, which is what the Titanic did not have because there's only extended 10 feet above the waterline of the ship. So the ship, obviously, the front went underwater, well above its waterline, so the water just kept flowing in and over this bulkhead and bulkhead and bulkhead. And
So
then,
now it'll like there's safety precautions to keep that from happening.
right. So now, after it sank, all bulkheads on other ships were extended higher to make them completely watertight.
Okay, so like it's layered vertically. So like
Right.
if a lower bulkhead gets broken, then there's another bulkhead above it that will help hold an air pocket.
Right, like behind it, because it'll go down the ship. So that's why it would kind of would have been like if Titanic had hit it head on.
Hmm.
None of the siding would have pierced multiple compartments of those bulkheads, so that water probably would have stayed in the front of the ship and been fine.
Okay, I see what you're saying here.
Yeah. And then one thing that did not change, which I think is going to lead into your theory here that we're about to get into, and I'll make
Uh
this
huh.
quick because I want to get into it with you.
Yeah.
One thing that did not change until years after this incident was the ship owner's liability after an accident. Now, in 1912, ship owners were only liable for the value of whatever parts of the ship remained intact. Now, the
Hmm.
Titanic fully went down, which means regardless of how many deaths there were,
Yeah.
Titanic survivors only received payouts of what the ship's lifeboats were worth. because that was the only part of the
Whoa.
ship that remained intact. How
I did
fucked
not know
up.
that. That is so fucked.
Yes.
Oh my god. But those life bolts were probably worth nothing.
Well, yeah, fucking four of them were collapsible. Like, Jesus.
So you
So,
spend millions and
yep.
millions of dollars on a ship and it sinks and you're probably going to get a couple grand back.
Yep. If that. And it
Oh
was
my
called,
god.
yep, it was called the casualty value of the vessel, which essentially meant that the more, the larger amount of casualties there were, the
Mhm.
less money there would be for claimants.
Okay, so with that being said, there's like one part of my research that I didn't do, and it's just like the aftermath of what happened after this. Did he get his insurance money? Do we know?
Who?
Uh, JP Morgan and the company that made it.
I don't know. I don't know if they did because the only thing I read about it was that, and then the changes that were made to it in 1957. It just changed it to where the insurance value was based on a vessel's tonnage instead of its remaining parts.
Okay, gotcha. All right, because that is a perfect segue into my conspiracy theory.
I thought it might be. You told me you were doing one, and I was like, I bet it has something to do with that shit
Yes.
about its sister.
So the like I pulled sources from several different articles, and on top of that, Kendall Ray, who's on YouTube, has a video about this.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about, and before we get started, I am drunk.
You're doing great.
I'm being a trooper and I'm pulling through. But you know what? This is fine. This is my relaxed time. Film a podcast, get drunk, have a great time.
Boom.
Yes. Okay. So, like I just said, the Titanic was built by a company called White Star Line.
Right.
This company was known for building ships, and at this time of them, at like the time of the incident of the Titanic, they were actually in the process of building World War II ships
Yeah.
to get ready to deploy those. And JP Morgan, who's associated with Chase Bank, that's how most people are going to relate to this in the podcast if they don't know who this is. He paired with the company White Star Line, and he funded and completely furnished all expenses in order to create a line of three ships.
Okay.
The three ships' names were number one, obviously the Titanic. There was one called the Britannic, and then there was one called the Olympic.
Okay. I know all
The
those names.
okay, so we've got, and like I have a lot of information here to cover, so I want everyone that's listening to like follow easily. So I'm gonna do my best.
Okay.
So just to recap, J.P. Morgan and White Star Line made these three ships: Titanic, Olympic, Britannic. The Titanic and the Olympic were almost identical to each other except for a few differences. The only difference that the Titanic had over the Olympic is that it had a clean record, and the only work that it had to have done to it was just routine maintenance. It had never had an accident, it had never had any problems. But the Olympic, on the other hand, had had multiple wrecks. It
Okay.
had gashes and bumps on the side of it that you could easily see were like quote unquote war wounds. They weren't war wounds, but where you had collided with ships and docks, and like it just whoever drove it didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
Yeah.
It had electrical problems, and the gashes on the side made it easily identifiable over the Titanic.
Okay.
And the
Weren't the
problem,
windows different too?
yes, and I'm going to get into that in just a second because
Okay.
I don't have pictures like put up anywhere. Eventually we're going to have something like that to where we can put it up. We just don't have anything set up right now. But really, if you Google these, they're going to pop up like on the top.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, the windows were different because the Titanic, its windows were thick and evenly spaced out. And the Olympic had windows that were long and thin, and they were not evenly spaced out. There were gashes in between them, which just made it look even more jank. Um, but the problem that JP Morgan was having with the Olympic is the fact that the insurance company would not cover the dents, it would not cover the wrecks, it would not cover the electrical problems that it was having. And when you pair this with the fact that it was the entire ship was leaning to the left,
Ah.
it was pretty much shit and unusable.
Okay.
So, since the Olympic couldn't be repaired, they actually chose to just dock it and put it somewhere, let it be. You can't use it anymore. It's not safe to drive.
Okay.
You drive a boat, right? You drive a boat?
We drive a boat, sail a boat. I mean, it
Okay.
had an engine, so I would say drive.
Okay. But since it couldn't be repaired and they chose to dock it, it was docked at the exact same place that the Titanic was having some routine maintenance because the Titanic was getting ready to go on that big
It's
cruise.
maiden voyage.
Exactly. The
Clever
last voyage
fucks.
that it would have at all.
First and last.
Yes. So the people think that there was a like master plan, and I'm actually going to give you facts that back this up. So I'm going to go ahead at this point with the knowledge that you have and tell you exactly what the conspiracy is, even though you can probably already guess it.
Yeah, let me take a guess. Let me
Yes.
guess.
Okay, go for
They switched the boats.
it. Yes.
Clever
um,
fuckers.
First of all, the Titanic was insured for far, far, far more than the Olympic was insured for.
Okay. Was it just because it was a
It
like an
was
ocean liner
like
for passengers?
it was I think what it was is the fact that it was built so much more sturdier than the Olympic because since they were a line of ships, they were all made differently, but they're claiming, and this will come into play later, but they're claiming that the Titanic should have been almost unsinkable.
Okay.
And so remember that when we get to our story later.
Okay.
So,
Well, that was their claim. So if they switched them, if that fucking actual Titanic is not sank, I guess they were right.
exactly, exactly. So since like it was insured for more, JP Morgan and White Star Line had this master, well, like this is speculation, but
Yeah.
they had the master plan to switch the two ships, and that's why they chose to dock it at the same place as the Titanic, so that way they could switch them, take the Olympic out, call it the Titanic, and then send that out to be sunk, sank, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that way you can claim the insurance money on that as the Titanic. And that was the only situation that JP Morgan was in to where he would be able to profit off of the shithole of the Olympic that he had on.
So maybe is this why? Because if as fucked up as that is, and they deserve just torture and hell for this, if that was their plan to actually sink the ship on purpose.
Hmm.
Now, is that maybe where this middle boat comes into play that there is speculation on for like maybe it was supposed to be there to get them?
Well, see, that's not where the middle boat is supposed to come into play, but that's where the SS Californian was supposed to come into play.
Ah,
Because, as weird as this sounds, the SS Californian was actually a passenger ship.
okay.
The day that it was out, the same day the Titanic, quote unquote Titanic crashed, the SS Californian was out on a voyage. There were absolutely zero passengers on it, and it was a passenger ship. So why the fuck are you out
Yeah,
there?
what are you doing?
And its only cargo were sweaters and blankets.
Mm, coincidental.
Yeah. So, like, why? And it was conveniently a couple hours away from the quote unquote Titanic.
Yeah.
So, if this is true, then the SS Californian could have saved the passengers, or could it?
Yeah.
Because people are speculating that this was clearly supposed to be a controlled crash. However, the problem that we're running into here, and I honestly, I really think, and like, clearly JP Morgan is not an idiot.
Right. I mean, you're not,
This
you can't just morally be okay with sending a ship out with people that, I mean, you're going to sink it.
Right. But White Star Line is also not an idiot. So, what I'm thinking, and like I've just drawn this conclusion from having done this research, this is where the fact that they think the Titanic was unsinkable, if it had sunk, it should have taken hours upon hours upon hours to sink, if this was the Titanic. So, from an outside perspective, it looks good for JP Morgan and the white whatever fucking company they're called.
White Star
Um,
Line.
yeah, White Star Line. It looks good if they have a plan B, especially if they had to go to court for it, or and if it looks good if they actually conveniently had a ship to save these people. However, even though the Titanic may not have been sinkable, this wasn't the Titanic. It was the Olympic.
Right.
So, going with this conspiracy theory, the Olympics sank way faster than they had thought, given the damages and the electrical problems and the gashes in the side. And it sank before the USS Californian can get to the people to save them.
So their calculation was off.
Yeah, so their calculation was off, which is what resulted in a huge casualty
But see,
because,
here's my thing. Like, if you have the Californian out there to rescue you, why would, and like, you would think they would collaborate with this ship, right? Like,
right,
hey, I need you here because this is what I'm doing, as fucked up as it is, and I need the insurance money. Don't tell anybody. Be close and
right,
listen to your fucking radio. Why would they turn their radio off for
right,
communications if this was a planned event?
exactly.
That doesn't make any sense to
So,
me. Like, I don't get it.
and like there, and it's weird because what I'm thinking could have been a possibility. And that could have been a fluke. Maybe that fucker just wasn't good at his job, or people just didn't give a shit
Yeah,
at that moment because, like, if you don't have a reason to be on high alert, maybe he wasn't in on it. Maybe it was just a, hey, I want you to be out here at this time, and
that's
then they
true.
assumed, well, if there's fucking people sinking a couple hours over, I'm gonna go save them.
That's true.
So
Maybe, yeah,
that
because
could
maybe
have,
you don't want to give too much information out because you're doing something so fucked up. Maybe you just
right.
like collaborated and was like, hey,
Yeah, and maybe you forgot to calculate the fact that the Olympic was going to sink faster than the Titanic. So you calculated it as if the Titanic was sinking,
right,
and then you had a huge flaw which caused all these people to die.
right.
So, and this could be
Plus,
completely wrong.
if there was a third ship in between the Californian and the Titanic and the radio bandwidth wasn't regulated yet, maybe they weren't able to get in contact with the Californian because there was a ship in between them and there was interference.
Right. And that also ties into the fact that, let's say hypothetically that the captain of the Titanic was in on it, and he thought that the middle ship was the USS Californian. Then he could have been like, oh, you know what? That's the USS Californian. It is close enough to save all of us, so I'm okay to do this. And if I don't do it, and like for all we know, this may be a bit of a stretch, but probably not since it was back in the older days. Maybe the captain could have like could have been threatened, or he could have been as powerful as JP Morgan is. He could have been like, if you come back with this ship intact, I'm going to kill you.
I mean, he could have, but that the captain, what was his name? I keep forgetting it.
I don't remember. All I remember is that he died.
He was like Captain Smith. It's a very bland white name.
Figures.
Um, but there's like a John and a Smith in there somewhere. But he was very well decorated for like he'd taken many ships out like on their maiden voyages and stuff, and it's just hard to believe that somebody that esteemed would allow even a threat on their life to put them in such a predicament.
True. Or like, in- and like, and this is why I find speculating like this so interesting because number one, even if that wasn't true, let's say hypothetically JP Morgan was like, hey, I'm going to get $5 million from this insurance policy if it pulls through. I need you to help make that happen. I'll give you $1 million of it if you sink this fucking ship.
Could have been.
Or like whatever amount. I don't know the exact amount, so don't hold me to that.
Yeah. Like it could have been because I mean it could have been a ploy for the insurance money to make more warships. And
Yeah,
if you're going to make more warships, that could involve many levels of governmental employees and, people in power. So maybe, I mean, people do fucked up shit, man. Like, it could
yeah,
have been.
and the thing is, I don't have this in my notes, but I did read across it. Um, if this company was making ships for World War II,
Right.
then everyone involved that even has a remote ounce of power is going to want to cover this up because not a
Right.
single soldier is going to want to get on a ship that can sink that easily. So then they're already going to have that backing of we need to cover this up because World War II is about to happen and we're not going to have any ships if we don't.
Yeah. And I mean, if you get the money from it, you can just build better warships because the one you had was shit anyway.
Exactly.
So take the biggest, baddest one, swap it out. There you go. Bada bing.
So I thought that was interesting. And I have a small section in my notes that you actually covered up, like cleared up for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I wrote in my notes that there were clear skies and there was very calm weather conditions. So how couldn't they have seen this coming? But I didn't know any of the stuff that you had told me.
Yeah.
But don't worry, I've got a few more. So this is interesting because there's actual proof of this.
Okay.
Like there is pictures backing up what I'm about to say.
Okay.
So I didn't know what a porthole was.
It's the circles. Now you know what it is.
I do know. I know now. um, for anyone who doesn't know, it is not a glory hole.
No.
It is. If you look at the Titanic and the Olympic, there's a little white strip at the top, and there's holes in it.
Mhm.
The Titanic had 14 portholes, and the Olympic had 16 portholes.
Okay.
There were eyewitnesses on the day that everyone was boarding the cruise ship that stated that the Titanic, the ship that they were getting on, had 16 portholes
So
the day they
not
were
the
getting on.
Titanic.
Right. So it clearly wasn't fucking the Titanic. And there are pictures that they'll pop right the fuck up on top on Google.
Mhm.
Um, if I can find one and put it on our social media, like later when this airs, I
Yeah.
will, so that you guys can see it. Shameless plug: Instagram, Twitter. I'll post it everywhere.
Yep.
But there were pictures that people took of their loved ones like getting on the quote
Yeah.
unquote Titanic, and every single one of those pictures, the ship has 16 portholes.
See, that's just fucked up, dude.
Yeah, like, and that is a detail. How the fuck how the fuck can you not notice the difference? And I understand that people are taking pictures and stuff. Back then, you didn't have the video cameras or the security that you do now. You didn't have the solid records of proof.
Right, so it really
Um,
wouldn't be all that far-fetched or difficult to probably pull this switcheroo, because normal
exactly.
people aren't going to notice how many fucking portholes are on the side of the ship,
Exactly.
until
And
afterward, and then you really start speculating. You're like, wait a fucking minute here.
right, and this is where, when you brought that point up, this is where the windows comes into play, and where I was going to bring this up, because the Titanic had thick windows that were evenly spaced out, and the Olympic had tall, thin windows that had big gaps in between them. And in the same picture that shows the 16 portholes of everyone boarding the quote unquote Titanic, these windows look jank as fuck. They're
Yeah,
not even, they're tall and thin, they match identical to the Olympic.
which would be more suited for a ship that was going to battle, because you don't want big big gaps in steel for like structural purposes. And
Exactly.
if you have a passenger ship, you're going to want them to be evenly spaced and kind of large, because you want the passengers to be able to see out.
Right. Exactly. Because it's more for tourism than it is for
Right.
safety and tactical.
It's for travel to get you across the big pond here safely, not to go to fucking war.
Yes. Um, so this is interesting. I actually found this in an article. I couldn't find this on like a YouTube video, but there was a scientist named Ronald Beasley.
I've read, yeah, Beasley
Yes.
Beasley.
Yes. He was getting on board that day, and he raised concern that day to the proper, and he was a scientist. I think I just like completely skipped over that in my notes.
Okay.
Um, so clearly, bitch was smart as fuck.
Right.
He raised concern to all of the specific authorities, and he raised concern enough to people to where we apparently have an account for this of that day.
Yeah.
Um, but he brought up the fact that the wait for
Can I
it,
guess?
you can guess.
Did he raise concern that the ship was listing?
He raised concern that the ship was leaning to the fucking
Yeah.
left.
Lean into the left, bitch.
Yes, and if you remember earlier in my
Yup.
story, the Olympic was the one that was leaning to the fucking left, and that's one of the reasons why it couldn't be used at all.
That's insane.
Yes. Um, and if you were wondering, he did die on the Titanic
Yeah.
because he was a dumb fuck and got on the ship anyway.
His bitch is leaning, but I'll go with it.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm just gonna go with it and see how we roll.
oh shit.
So that royally, like, I just
It becomes
like,
a little more plausible with every little detail, but it's
yeah,
just so fucked up. Like, I don't want to believe that that's true.
yeah, I know, but like when like these huge companies, like hypothetically sometime last year, and I brought this up in a previous podcast, but this billionaire Morgan and Morgan, they got busted for having all kinds of huge drugs in a container on a ship.
Yeah, like you just don't know
Like,
what people are
yeah, and
into.
they're probably going to get out of it because there are white old males as lawyers on their team, and they'll probably just get off with a slap on the wrist
Yep, and
because that's the kind of world that we live in.
like you said, if enough people want it covered up, it's
It,
gonna get covered up.
yeah, and there's not going to be any consequences whatsoever. And
That's
if the
right.
government is listening to this, I don't mean anything.
I don't mean anything by it. I'm just reading shit from what I
Yeah,
read.
I'm just reading my notes. um, but like one of the things, and this is my last bullet point,
Okay.
and this is like the icing on the cake here. There were a lot of celebrities that were supposed to be taking this cruise.
Yes.
Yes, there was a lot of A-list people, a lot of JP Morgan's friends that were supposed to be on here. And JP Morgan himself was actually going to be on this boat. But before the day before the ship was supposed to leave port or dock or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
all of the celebrities canceled. All of JP Morgan's friends canceled, and then JP Morgan himself said that he was sick and he could not go.
Interesting.
So every single person that was important, quote unquote, to a certain degree, canceled last minute and didn't go on the cruise that would have inevitably ended their lives.
Damn. Now, see, if you thought you had it all structurally sound to be picked up with all, the sweaters and shit on your friend boat over there, why
Then,
would you cancel everything if
right,
you thought it was kosher?
why the fuck would you cancel unless you thought that maybe your life was going to be in fucking jeopardy?
Yeah, because you knew it was morally wrong.
Yeah.
You knew there's always a chance some shit could go wrong, and it did.
Yeah, exactly. And like just I wanted to be skeptical about this. I really did. And like we'll never 100% know what happened,
Yeah,
but there's so many counts of evidence to back up the fact that this would have been switched.
right.
Like just the fact that JP Morgan was an old male makes me think that this is possible because of the fucking patriarchy system.
Yeah,
Like that alone. But then when you add all of these facts, and I do label some of them as facts because we have fucking photographs to show that there were 16 portholes,
right.
like that's ridiculous to me. And it makes it very plausible. So to a degree, I believe in this.
Yeah. Some of it's plausible and I don't want to believe it, and then other things are a little sketchy in there, but like I mean there's photographic proof, then I mean it raises you suspect.
Yeah, and
Like
like it's a solid run here.
circumstantial evidence, but I mean it's suspect.
Mm-hmm. So that is
That's
my
interesting.
segment.
Well, I got a little tangent story here for
All
you
right, let's
too.
go.
Doesn't really have anything too much to do with the Titanic. It's just kind of coincidental.
Uh-huh.
Um so Morgan Robertson,
Uh-huh.
he was the author of Futility, which is a
Uh-huh.
book. And some people think that he predicted the sinking of the Titanic 14 years prior.
14?
Yep. So he wrote a book. You've probably heard of it, where he writes about a British passenger ocean liner named the SS Titan.
The Titan.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to give you a little quick list of similarities between the Titan versus the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
So in the book, the Titan was written at 800 feet long. The Titanic was 883 feet long. Titan was traveling 25 knots when it crashed.
Uh-huh.
Titanic was traveling 23 knots almost.
Oh.
The Titan was written It was written that the Titan struck an iceberg on the starboard side on a night in April around midnight in the North Atlantic, 400 nautical miles from Newfoundland. Now,
What?
I don't know if you recall all the information, but the fucking Titanic struck on the starboard side April 15th at 11:40 p.m. in the North Atlantic, 400 miles from land.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
So, like, that is so weird. We need to have an entire fucking podcast episode on people who have predicted shit.
we should. We'll get into some Nostradamus effects.
Yeah, is it metaphysical?
Metaphorical?
Metaphysical?
I don't know
No.
what you're trying to say.
Like, shit, like the flower of life. Have you heard of the flower of life?
Is it a metaphor?
It
Metaphorical?
it's actually the flower of life. It's really fucking interesting. This is completely off topic, but we're pretty much at the end of our podcast, so I'm gonna go into it anyway because this may turn into an episode of its own. Um, the flower of life ties into sacred geometry.
Oh, I know what it is. Yeah. I know
Yeah,
what you're
and
talking
like
about.
every single shape that exists to man can be found. can be
in
found,
can be found in
can be
this
found,
flower.
yeah, in this flower of life. And I actually watched, if I can find this YouTube video, I'm going to send it to you. And then I'm also going to post it on our Patreon for everybody to see because it blew my mind. Because
Yeah.
when I finished watching it, I was like, what is life?
We'll have to do a podcast over it.
Yes.
But both the Titan and the Titanic were both described as unsinkable ships.
Hmm.
Both were described as the largest craft afloat and the greatest works of men, and both carried less lifeboats than what they were supposed to. So he wrote about all of this, and it's so similar to the
And I'm
Titanic that
going
it's
to
eerie.
assume this book was popular.
I think so.
And if it wasn't then, it sure as fuck is now, I'm sure.
Yeah. So then some of the dissimilarities of it were the route that they were traveling. The Titan was going from New York to Liverpool, England, where the Titanic was going from Southampton, England to New York. The Titan was
Okay.
written with stormy seas. The Titanic was calm seas. Titan was written with 3 previous voyages when the Titanic was on its maiden voyage. However, if they did switch the Titanic with the other ship, maybe the other ship had been on 3 voyages.
That's true. I didn't think about that. We should look that up.
Yeah. And then the Titan was hit head on by the iceberg, where the Titanic grazed one, and the Titan sank in 5 minutes, where the Titanic took 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I just thought that was a little interesting titty bitty.
I'm looking up how many voyages the Olympic went on because I want to. I have to know.
Well,
Uh,
this was a good episode. I was excited for this one because people can make fun of me all they want, but Titanic is my favorite movie, and I love anything to do with Titanic. The museum was just amazing.
I want to go on that museum so fucking bad.
It's 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 something like it's an experience. I really enjoyed it, but it was also, it's very emotional. I like watching any kind of documentary over it. It's just good. Like it's horrible, but I just
I
find
mean,
it fascinating.
well, it's such a big piece of history.
Right.
And it's just like, I think what brings the interest in for me is the fact that there are so many mysterious aspects of it that really you can speculate up to a certain point, but we're never really going to know exactly what happened. And
Right.
I think that's why I was like so drawn to like conspiracy theories and like in general, but like this specifically.
Yeah.
This is like almost plausible with the amount of facts that it has built up to it.
Yeah.
um
Well, and
like
everybody that had anything to do with it, I mean, they're dead now.
yeah, so like it's a mystery. You're never gonna know.
Yeah.
It's done.
It's just now it's the eyewitness accounts and the written statements and the books and shit that were written by survivors after the fact versus scientific evidence that we are culminating today with new technology.
Yeah, so it's just it's ridiculously crazy to me, and I can't think about it without having a lot of anxiety or drinking.
Yeah. It's
But
good
I
stuff
can
though.
fucking sing Celine Dion all up in my car all night long.
Did you see how many voyages the
I was looking, I can't figure out how to word it because see, this is where it gets fucky because it says that throughout the Olympics lifetime, it completed 257 round trips to the Atlantic, but I can't
does it
find
say how
the
many
time cut. I can't find how many it took before the Titanic, quote unquote, sank because this is throughout the lifetime of the ship. But if the Olympic and the Titanic got switched, like we're speculating, then that's not accurate because I
yeah,
can't find how many trips it made up until the date that the Titanic sank
let's see. So we would just need to know RMS Olympics voyages before 1912.
before 1912. Olympic. We're going to get this for you guys before we fucking get off here. Olympic voyages before 1912.
Yeah, because that's when the Titanic set sail. So god! And in the movie, whenever the old people are in the bed going down with the ship,
Oh
oh
my
my god!
god. I remember reading about that actually. That old man was like a famous rich senator and he wanted his wife to get on the boat, and I know old people get you and make you cry.
Yep.
But he wanted his wife to get on the boat, and his wife was like, "We have spent 40 years together. We've spent our whole life together. We're going to spend our death together. I am not getting on a lifeboat if you aren't."
Oh, it'll make
So,
me cry right now.
yes, and they chose and this like is real apparently. They literally chose to die together.
Oh,
So
God
that
bless them. I
actually
can't.
the
I
so that
can't.
actually happened.
Uh,
Oh.
I will cry right now. Um, I can't find anything about it, but
I can't either. I'm getting pissed.
it'll be all right. If we find it, we'll just type it in the description.
Yeah, or we'll
This,
post it on Patreon.
whatever, this has been a good
Mhm.
cast. I quite enjoyed this.
Me too. This was a really good one. We should do more like this. We need to dive into some hot topics.
Hot topics. If anybody listening has
Yes.
any hot topics they would like us to explore, please leave them in a comment section below of whatever you're listening on. If you're watching this on YouTube, we apologize you can't see our beautiful, beautiful faces.
Yeah.
But desperate times, man.
Yes. And if you want to communicate with us on any social media sites, everywhere this podcast is going to be posted, we will make sure that our hashtags for all of our social media handles are on the description box of whatever you're watching. So if you want to follow us on that, you can reach out to us and communicate to us. Or if you have suggestions on topics, anything related to something like that, whether it even just be a question on the podcast itself, you can always ask us.
Open books.
Yes, open books all the time. I mean, we're all in quarantine. It's not Sydney's still working, but I'm fucking at home, so I can answer your
That's
questions.
right.
Oh
Thank you guys
God,
for listening, joining us this Monday, this week.
yes, thank you so much. We will have another episode next week.
Be sure to check out our Patreon if you would like. We'll have an extra cast up of whatever we want to talk about. That will be this month, April.
Yes, yes, for sure. And if you would like, we're not poor, but I am, and so I guess I can speak for myself in the fact that I would love for you to donate to our Patreon. And if you can't, that's totally fine. I totally get it. But the least, if you can, it is free for you to leave a 5-star review on our Apple Podcast review. That would be much appreciated.
We love it. We love you.
Yes. So we will see you guys next week, and you guys stay safe and wash your hands.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.